This is the 2019 Junior Cert Ordinary Level Question 2, looking at the ellipse. So if we just have a look at the question, the graphic shows an outline design for a Darth Vader helmet. The design is based on an ellipse and circles as shown. The curve ABC is a semi-ellipse, so that's up at the top. BO is half the major axis of the ellipse and is 80 millimeters long. So we can find BO, that's from the very top point down to the center. AO is half the minor axis and is 60 millimeters long, so that's from the left hand side to the center. Draw the given semi-ellipse and complete the design showing all constructions. So I set this up in the center of my page. I've positioned point O just somewhere in the middle, and then I've drawn a vertical line and a horizontal line out of that being the major axis and the minor axis. Now we're told in the question that the half the major axis BO, with B being up here somewhere. So we're going to draw in our major axis first, and that is 80 millimeters long. Now we're also told that half the minor axis is 60 millimeters long, so from A to O, that's 60. So it'll be the same distance on the opposite side out to C, that's also 60. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to draw the major auxiliary circle. As you can see, there is a circle on the page that goes through B, and it also tells us where the bottom of the question is. So that's our major auxiliary circle. I'm now going to do the minor auxiliary circle also. I'm going to use the auxiliary circles method to draw this ellipse. You can use the Trammell method if you like, and you can look at one of my earlier videos on how you set up the Trammell. So that's the minor auxiliary circle. So just marking a couple of points that we have on the curve already, 1, 2, and 3. So what I need to do next, I'm going to divide my auxiliary circles up into a number of parts. So I'm going to find a couple of lines. So that's one line. So all of this is being drawn lightly. Now from each point, each line, anytime it cuts either the major or the minor auxiliary circle, we're going to have to go perpendicular to that point to the axis that it's cutting. So this point here, it cuts the major auxiliary circle, which means I'm going to go perpendicular to the major axis. This is the major axis from that point. So perpendicular to the major axis is a horizontal line in along this way. That same line, this one, cuts the minor auxiliary circle at that point, so I'm going to go perpendicular to that also. So from that point I'm going to go perpendicular to the minor axis, giving me this point here, point on the curve. Do the same thing for this line. This cuts the major auxiliary circle, so go perpendicular to the major axis is this line here. So it's going to be somewhere along that line. My line, the 60-degree line that I drew, cuts the minor auxiliary circle at that point. It's going perpendicular to the minor axis, gives me this point coming up along here. So I now have 1, 2, 3, and 4 points on that side of the curve. I'm going to do the same thing for the opposite side. So this cuts the major auxiliary circle perpendicular to the major axis is this way. Cuts the minor auxiliary circle perpendicular to the minor axis, give me that point. And one more point now to locate. Same idea, perpendicular to the minor axis, perpendicular to the major axis, giving me my points there. Next, what I need to do is I need to draw the best curve that I can, joining all of these points up. So take your time at it. You don't need to do it in one go. And there we have the top part of our ellipse. So the ellipse drawn. So I have A, B, and C. The next part of this, I'm going to look at completing the top of this, and that's a 10mm section. coming just near B, the vertical section coming down the middle of that. So to do that, it's 10 millimeters wide, but that means it's 5 millimeters on either side of my major axis. So that's 10 millimeters wide, but 5 on either side of the axis. So I'm going to have two lines coming down along here, and that's where they're going to be. So they'll continue the whole way down, because that's also going to give me the nose part of the helmet. Now what that also gives me is it allows me to draw the two eyes. So those two eyes, they're radius 14, but they are tangential to that point and this point here. So it gives me two important points. So if it's 14 millimeters and it touches off that point, the radius is measured from there, giving me the center on this side, and from that point again, so from that 5 mil out, 14 here also. And there are my two centers. So I can now draw my two eyes, the two eyes of Darth Vader, set it to 14 millimeters, and we can draw in the eyes. So 1, 1 and 2. So the two eyes are drawn in there. Now, so working our way down, what that also gives us is the kind of eyebrow part of his eyes, and we're shown a center for that. That's given on, we can see on the one on the right, has a radius of 30, and if you follow that radius line down, you can see where the center of that arc is going to be. So that arc starts at the bottom of that 14 millimeter of the two eyes that we drew. So they're going to be starting at that point here, and on the one on the right hand side, same point there. So they're radius 30. I'm just going to draw a horizontal line out either side, because where the arc stops is on the line horizontal from its center. So setting up my compass to measure 30 millimeters. So that's set to 30 millimeters. I'm going to swing an arc now until it comes into the middle. Don't know where it stops just yet, it'll intersect the other one. 30 millimeters coming from this side also. Comes into the middle and it crosses at that point in the middle. So I can darken in that line now until it touches off that line in the center. Same on this side, so just darkening in my line. Give me those two parts of that there. Now we're going to start looking at the bottom part of this, the lower part of the face, so where the mouth area would be, and those two arcs on the grey pieces on the side. But to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the bottom rectangle. So if you look closely at the question, you can see there's kind of a rectangle that comes from the minor axis, the line AC, and it's the full width of that circle that we drew at the start, and it comes all the way down to the bottom of that circle. So it's coming from these 2 points here all the way down to the bottom down here. So let's draw that rectangle now next. So now I have these bottom corners where there's important lines going to be joining to. And there's a few more bits that I'd like to put in here now next. So on the side you've got a 62 and an 18, so let's mark in that at 18 millimeters. So measuring up from bottom, 18 millimeters. Make sure it's done nice and accurately. That gives us our point for the 18. I'm just going to draw a horizontal line lightly just across that, as that's going to give me quite a bit of information that I need. So from here I've now located 2 more points. there's a straight line joining from A down, so it starts from A and it comes down to this point if we look closely at the drawing. So that gives me one line that I can do there. All this is a straight line drawn between the two. So if I have 2 points, a start point and end point, I can draw a line. So that's the start and end of that one. It's identical on the opposite side, coming from C, so I can draw that line in also. What we look at next is on the bottom left and bottom right, there's an arc coming from this point coming down along this way, and this one coming down along this way. Now, all it tells us is that it's radius r, so we need to figure out what r is. If it has to touch off this bottom line and it centers on this line, what's the distance? The distance between them, the dimension between them, it's going to be 18 millimeters. So if that's 18 millimeters, and this is going to form part of a circle, so it's an arc, the center has to be 18 millimeters from here also. If it's less than it, it's not going to touch the line at the bottom, and if it's greater than it, it's going to cut through the line at the bottom. So our center has to be in here 18 millimeters. So you can set that, and we're just going to draw an arc. Just mark where it stops at the bottom. Set your compass to 18 mil. So 18 there, and same on the opposite side. I can now just darken in my line across the bottom, joining those 2 points. So just a quick recap there on that piece. We're told that down here it's radius r from here somewhere to this. We know that that's a height of 18 because this line here is 18 millimeters above the bottom one. We're given that in the question. So if this needs to be tangential to it and it can't cut through it and it has to touch off it, the distance from here to the center, the radius has to be 18. If the radius is 18 and it touches this point, it's going to be 18 millimeters from this corner into the center also, to get my center point for the arc. A few more bits now, just almost there with this question, and that is the pieces coming from the eyebrows, we'll call them, here and here. Where do they join to? So if you look at those lines carefully, they stop somewhere down here, but where do they join to? So if you look at the line, you follow the line down along, and it comes all the way down to the bottom left corner, and from the one on the right down to the bottom right corner. So I can draw my line starting at the edge of the eyebrows, and it's heading for that bottom left corner, and it's going to stop just when it touches the 2 arcs that we've just drawn. So left and right. That's those 2 lines. A few more pieces now that need to go in. You've got the 2 dark grey pieces down in the bottom left and right corner. They're given a radius 50, and if you follow the radius line back, it comes back to that corner that we just drew our lines down here too. So these ones came down along here, and just, that's a light line continuing the rest of the way down. So I have 2 arcs, radius 50 on either side, just measuring my distance of 50 from the center, and I'm going to draw up my arc on the left and the right. So it's going from here, it goes all the way around to the line that we just drew, the straight line that we just drew. So 1, and same on the opposite side. And 2. So that's almost us done with this question. There's still the mouth and nose piece to go in. So we're given some information for that. We know that if we look at the question, the center nose part comes down 12 millimeters below the bottom of the eyes. and then the two lines on either side come off at 60 degrees. And then the darker grey parts there, they're 10 millimeters out from the center lines that we had drawn already. So I'm going to measure down just below the eyes, down 12 millimeters. And that's going to give me those two corners from where my 60 degree lines are drawn from. So 60 degrees on either side. Where do those lines stop? If you look at the very bottom of that triangle, you can see that it's in line with the 18 millimeter line that we drew early on. So it stops when it cuts this line going across. So I'll darken in that part of my line. So across here, it's going to be dark as far as there. So I'll darken in that part of it. Now, so this is almost as finished, so just darkening in the bit here in the center, so we already have that line, and the top of his nose. And now there's just two more bits, so there's lines that need to come down here to section this off. So we already have that first part. The next line out then is 10 millimeters either side, so 10 millimeters left and to the right, left and right, darkening that line. And that's our question completed. You do not need to shade in this sketch or your drawing. If you want to, you can, but you are not required to draw to darken this in.